Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the new moon in the third decan of Gemini. Please let me know if you are here today in the comments. Let me know if everything's going well your way. Let me know if you can hear me. Sometimes I've had some technical issues going on over the last little while here, but hopefully everything is right side up today. We are going to be talking about the new moon in the first, I said it again, the third 10 degree section of Gemini. We're going to be breaking down the host, Mercury. We're going to be talking about the mutual reception between Mercury and the moon. We are going to be talking a little bit about how the astrology is going to unfold over the next little while here. So buckle up for an hour, couple hours of astrology. And yeah, hope everything's going well your way, friends. All right, let's see. And let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you're here today. Let me know if everything is going well. Okay. Yeah, okay. Sounds like you can hear me. Okay. So new moon, Gemini 3. Before we dive into all of that, okay, Ani is here. Welcome, Ani. Hope everything's going well your way. Before we dive into all of that today, a couple announcements. We are going to go through a few offerings that I have here today. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. I do these live streams generally once a week on Fridays or so. Sometimes it's Thursday, sometimes it's another day, but mostly we go live Friday afternoon around 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern time. And we break down the astrology. We have a discussion with the group. We have a really nice community of people here. We have, Ani says loud and clear. All right, thanks, Ani. Appreciate you, friend. We have a really nice group of people who are very knowledgeable that we kind of co-create these broadcasts with as we go along. We'd like to break things down with the decans and with fixed stars and with traditional astrology techniques. We use Hellenistic astrology, but we're not so fixated on Hellenistic astrology that we can't leave some space for some of the outer planet things as well. And it's just a good time. So hopefully you can come to YouTube every week, but you can also find me at spencermichaud.com. And this is where I do my readings. My offerings, where if you are needing assistance personally, you can ask a question in the live today, but if you want more of a one-on-one intimate type of situation, you can find me over at spencermichaud.com. Click on the Book Now button. I have all sorts of different types of offerings, a Mythos natal reading where we go over your natal story and we kind of break down all the things that you've been going through, potentially throughout the repetitive patterns of your entire life, maybe not your entire life, but most of the things that come up over and over again. Kairos transit reading, where we're preparing you for the months ahead, looking at what's going to come into the future and kind of preparing you so you can make better choices in the moment. The Hore is one where you're doing a quarterly check-in, where you're doing those transit readings, but you come every few months and you get a little bit of a discount if you buy those in bulk. Oracle, if you have one specific question or one question, there's like a 60-minute session where we utilize astrology, tarot, I-Ching, animal symbols to help you work through that challenge. A lot of my readings, well, every single one of my readings is a back and forth discussion. I'm never going to be just talking at you. It's a collaborative, co-creating effort where really instead of me just saying, look at all these things I know about your chart and astrology, it's more like, how can we help you answer the question that you have? How can we alleviate some of your suffering? How can we build you towards success? How can we help change the repetitive stories? I think this is one of the things that I really find useful about all of these oracular arts is how can we change the story that is repeating in our lives and understand it better so that we know which way is going with the current and which way is trying to maybe exhaust ourselves swimming against it. I think those are really valuable because it helps us to be more efficient with our energy, helps us to actually achieve the things that we're meant to achieve rather than trying to go against the grain with things that just may not be for us in this lifetime. And just to make better choices in the moment to deal with what's coming. You can also do a Trinity Big 3 mini reading, Sun, Moon, Rising, if you want just a little introduction to your chart. And then I also do tutoring sessions. I love teaching. These sessions that I do here on YouTube, they are some predictive, oracular type of things to prepare you for the weeks ahead, but a lot of it is just teaching concepts related to both Hellenistic astrology, the decans, the tarot, fixed stars. I'm a teacher at heart, and I love being able to kind of help you to understand how to utilize some of these things on your own time as well. I like to foster that kind of interdependence rather than codependence with your friendly astrologer. I think that's a good way to be in life, interdependent with one another. Okay, so those are the offerings I have. A couple other things to mention before we get going. Rachel Fletcher is here. What's up, Rachel Fletcher? Nice to see you from Roanoke, Virginia. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. Always lovely to see you here in the chat. A couple of things. You can also find, speaking of teaching, I have a number of webinars that I have pre-recorded or that I did live at one point with an audience or with a partner. Like I have this beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, who I did some teachings with as well. And you can find those recordings at the store. Some of them are my webinars on the decans, which are really not just about the decans. They're about the planets. They're about the tarot. They're about fixed stars. They're about mythology. They are really just like an amalgamation of all the knowledge I had at the time when I was recording them. It's a couple years ago, but not that long ago. And then just pouring it into a container for you and seeing what comes out of it for you. Dignity and Devotion is also a series my partner and I did on the 7 traditional planets. It has an element of seeing those planets through the different dignities, but also an element of planetary magic where we're learning how to craft a devotional practice and an elective practice, where a lot of times in what astrologers would have done in the ancient civilizations is not only were they using astrology to predict, they were utilizing it to capture that energy in a material form, either a talisman or like an oil or something of that nature. And we talk about how to do that. And speaking of that, my partner has a business, Third Coast Mojo, where she does exactly that. She elects things through the astrology and captures it into some kind of material form, which can help us when we're moving through some of the more challenging transits in our life, or can help us with the repetitive stories that we have inherited either from our astrology or from our trauma, or etc. So go check out Tanya over at Third Coast Mojo. She's got Glamour Magic soap right now is on sale. There's some really cool stuff there. Scientific Method is a Saturn and Aquarius election that can be really helpful right now because Saturn is in Aries and it's fall in a place where it's not as effective as it could be if it was in a place like this. So if you're struggling with discipline or struggling with seeing the big picture and you feel like everything is immediate, like you have to take care of everything right now, Scientific Method says, here's the priority. Here is what you can work on right now. Here's what you need to think about more long-term. Here are the steps and how you can break it out into multiple steps. It's really useful for that kind of thinking. Exalted Mars, hi John. A lot of these are conjure formulas or hoodoo inspired as well. So my partner has a foundation in hoodoo and conjure, and she combines that with astrological magic and is able to make these beautiful custom oils here with like High John the Conqueror root. Like High John root is good for just toughness and like really like working through some of the twists and turns that life sends you. So Exalted Mars and Capricorn is a great kind of combination election with that. Blockbuster is another one from that same election with Mars and Capricorn. Sun and Leo, Easy Life, like smoothing your path ahead. There's a Lion's Light that helps you shine your light out there in the world too, and garner or gather the light or the type of attention that you might want. That's going to be important with Jupiter and Venus moving into Leo. So some of the Sun and Leo material might be really great to help boost your prospects during Venus and Jupiter moving into Leo. Venus and Pisces, Come to Me oil, great for attraction, great for attracting all sorts of goodies into your life. Sun and Leo, Crown of Success, another thing we've got going on here that is in that Sun and Leo election. And then Mercury and Virgo, Hermes Harvest. That's great for like detailed tasks, concentration, focus, all these good things. So check her out, Third Coast Mojo. She does wonderful work. You're supporting the channel when you support her work as well, since we are a team. Okay, so also, if you want to know when things are going live, whether I'm going live on YouTube or whether new products are being launched, new classes are being launched, you can subscribe to the newsletter here. Wherever you are getting this podcast here today, sign up for the newsletter. You get a discount, 10% off readings if you sign up. So I'd love to be able to connect with you in that fashion. And then also, you can support the channel by purchasing a super chat here today or going to buymeacoffee.com, which is like a Patreon-like channel. We really survive, this channel survives off of the generosity of people like you who are listening and supporting. We go live every week. We share a lot of information. I think more information than is the norm in this business, and your donations and your gifts to the channel really do help sustain us here. So thank you, all of you who are able to do so here today. Okay, friends, let's talk about this Gemini new moon. We have this Gemini new moon, Sunday, the 14th of June, 24 degrees of Gemini. We are recording this while the moon is balsamic. So when we have a balsamic moon, the light is at its kind of darkest, right? We're kind of dragging ourselves along a little bit. We're releasing and letting go of things, and we're about to plant the seed for something at the new moon in Gemini 3. Now, what kind of seeds are we planting? And what are the big picture thoughts that we have? A couple things just about Gemini 3 in general. We'll talk about this more as we go into more detailed analysis. But Gemini 3, the third 10-degree section of Gemini, is the last decan or 10-degree area of the zodiac that we have before the summer solstice. So we have this kind of energy of ascension, okay, where the sun, if you look physically, like we want to connect our physical observations, our oracular eyes, right? What we see with how we find meaning. That's what all of this is. I really believe in the oracular power of astrology. This is why I don't get as fixated on, I don't know, being rigid about my technique as I might have used to in the past, and why I incorporate things like tarot and animal symbols, because I think all of this is some kind of communication between us and the divine. So what we're doing when we see the sun around this period of time is it is still rising each day, and the days are still becoming longer. It's still rising higher in the sky, in a higher declination in relationship to the ecliptic. Those are fancy words for saying that the sun is reaching a higher point in the sky each day until we get to the summer solstice, and it sort of, stations here, and then it starts rising slightly lower in the sky, and the days become slightly shorter and the night becomes longer. It is a turning point. It is a transition point. Many cultures had rituals associated with the death of one king that ruled over sort of the daylight type of part of the year, and the rise of the king or the deity for the dark part of the year. Now, we're not to the point where the darkness has taken over power, because we get to that at the equinox, where the night becomes longer than the day. We still have the light part of the year where the days are longer, but we're starting to see the rise of darkness. Now, what does that mean when we're thinking about a new moon, Gemini, etc.? Well, oftentimes we think of Gemini as changeable, mercurial, precocious. I would offer it is actually very ambitious, where we are trying to explore all of the different possibilities, all of the ideas of the things that we want to bring into physical manifestation, the things that we want to give a body to. What ideas do we want to infuse into physical reality? And when we get to this point, we are saturated with ideas. We are saturated with physicality. We're with mental ideas. Sorry, we're saturated with the possibilities of physicality. Not necessarily yet with physicality. We'll get to a point in the year where that is true. But we're saturated with all of the directions that we could head in life. And eventually, we understand that we have certain limitations. I know that in the metaphysical community, we don't like to talk about limitations. I think that is doing a great disservice to the reality that we live in. We live in a both limited and unlimited universe, depending on the perspective that you want to take. I do think we are much more powerful when we understand our limits and we work within them. I think it's okay to kind of try to aspire towards breaking out of them at certain times, but we have only so much time. We have only so many resources. We have so much energy. We have so many daylight hours. I mean, these are kind of non-negotiable things. We have a 24-hour day. We have roughly, I don't know, at this point, about, I don't know, what's 24 minus 9, right? We have about that many daylight hours. Sorry, math was about 17 hours of daylight. And that is limited. There's only so many things we can do in the 17 hours of daylight that we have, or the waking hours that we have. And eventually those daylight hours will start to decrease. Okay. When we see the daylight increasing, we can do more. We can literally do more outside or projects like where we're awake and where we're feeling more active. But as that light starts to wane and it starts to decrease, we start to get a little bit less able to put that energy out into the world. And when we get to the winter solstice, we may be not having as much energy at all to do some of those things, especially outside. Now, modern society really messes with this because we are not attuned seasonally. We are attuned to profit. Like, we'll just be direct about it. Western civilization is attuned to number go up, profit, to growth mindset at all cost. It's very destructive. It's very destructive to think in that way. It's very destructive to try to live in that way. It's very destructive to our planet, to our mental health, to our bodies, to our nervous systems, to each other, to equality between people and nations. And when we start to understand life seasonally, we understand that there is a time for growth and a time for decay, or a time for putting out more ideas into the world and a time for eliminating some of them so that we can nurture the ones that we truly are invested in and that can be supported with the type of space weather or energy that we have or season of our life. Think about the difference between the season when you were a teenager of life and the season if you are in your elderly years. If there is a big difference in your energy levels between being 15 years old and being 85 years old. Those are different seasons of life. You have different goals, you have different desires, you have different beliefs. I mean, the same is true each year we go through our life, right? Each year we say, hey, I've got this amount of energy, I've got this amount of resources, I've got this amount of ideas. Right now, the space weather is supportive, I think, of sharing our excess, I guess, of being the generous benefactor that other people might need. I think that there is a lot of support in the sky right now for figuring out what you have to give, whether it's physical resources, whether it's time, whether it's your knowledge, whether it's your emotional support, whether it's just your presence for somebody. We have maybe Mars moving through Taurus right now, saying we might not have the material resources that we desire. We might be struggling with consistency in our routines. So we also are seeing Uranus in Gemini saying, hey, maybe we need to have some new ideas about how we communicate with one another. All of those things can contribute to what is or isn't possible. Saturn is in its fall. Saturn's saying you kind of have to make a new start and you don't really have a choice. And you're bound to that. You have to declare what your values are. You have to declare how you are going to work through releasing codependency and moving a little bit more towards independence and interdependence. We don't want to just say just independence, because that is a myth. There is never just independence, that we live in relationship to one another. But there are certain situations where we're too tightly bonded, and Saturn is saying this is the end of that too tightly bonded situation. It's time for you to make a new start. Let's see. Ani says 15. Yeah, right. Leanne is here. Says, hey, Spencer. Hey, chat. Hope everyone is well. Nice to see you, Leanne. Hope you're doing well over on the other side of the pond, so to speak. Ani says, DLS time was created for retailers, right? Yeah, right. Daylight savings time? Yes. Time is a construct on some level too, right? But we have to work within some of that construct. There are flexibilities. Don't get me wrong. You know, we're on this channel. We believe in fate. We believe in different types of fate, though. We believe in some hard fates. We believe in some fates that are created through ignorance, and we believe in some fates that are a little bit malleable, maybe through our wisdom, through our awareness, maybe through astrological magic, maybe through like just pushing, nudging fate in different directions. We believe in all of that. So sometimes we have to learn what is movable and what isn't. Now, when we get to this decan of Gemini, all of that was a philosophical exploration of where we are with our limits. When we get to this point in the year, we're saturated with ideas. We are potentially having difficulty reconciling all of those different directions. The journey through Gemini says, here's an explosion of ideas. And then we have to start to, one of the books I love, this is 36 Secrets by Susie Chang. And it's sort of a build off of 36 Faces by Austin Coppock, both seminal texts when it comes to the decans and with tarot. Susie Chang talks about the journey of the Gemini decans as frustration in the first decan, to anxiety in the second, and then collapse in the third. So we're frustrated because we have all these directions we could go, but we might feel a little bit paralyzed. Then we get the anxiety, the sleeplessness that comes where we're trying to choose. We're like, we could go this direction, we could go this other direction, but we're just, feeling overwhelmed by the choices. And then by this time in the sky, we are seeing a point where you just can't keep them all the plates spinning. Some of them are going to fall. You've got too many plates. You can't keep like spinning them. All right. And eventually we have to choose and eliminate the other choices. This is spoken towards in myth quite often, where we have the story of Castor and Pollux, this Discovery, where we have one twin that is mortal, one that is immortal. The mortal twin is slain, and the other twin is the immortal twin, can't live without them or is very saddened by this and sacrifices some of his immortality so that the other can live, and they alternate days in the land of the living or on Olympus and then in Hades, the underworld. So there is an element of sacrifice to this decan. But when we do it willingly, when we do it in a way that is with joy rather than with dread, I think that can make all the difference. There's a spirit in this decan, according to the 36 heirs of the zodiac, called Praxidike. This is something that you learn from Austin Coppock in 36 Faces. And that is a spirit that is related to justice and the exactor of justice. So he calls it an executioner's sword. So we are seeing things sort of in high contrast. There's two decanic planetary rulers to this decan, the Sun and Saturn, and based on different systems of knowledge. And when we see that, we see high contrast, where we have an awareness of what we have to do, and when we have with the Sun. And then with Saturn, we have this like a need to castrate. Saturn is a castrator, castrates possibilities into material form. So I'm going to eliminate the other possibilities. And what remains is what is real. So we have to figure out which of those options we want to eliminate. Which of those things are possible to bring to fruition? Which of them are just no longer in season or not possible with the resources, the time, the daylight hours that we have? I'm acutely aware of the daylight hours as a gardener. It's harder to do work when it gets dark. It's harder to do work if the weather isn't right. I can predict how much light we're going to have every year. It's very similar each year. I can't always predict what the weather is going to be like every year. I can have a general idea, Like this season has been generally a little bit cooler in the beginning and drier in my area. But some days I might have a plan to go out and work and a storm comes. And sometimes we can predict the severity of it, sometimes we can't. The same thing is true metaphorically in our lives. We can have a general idea of what this time of year will entail for us personally based on our previous experiences, based on our rhythms that we experience in our life. Sometimes we can sort of predict a storm coming if we look at the astrology or we look at the oracular messages that we're receiving. Other times things come to us that are a little bit unexpected and we have to deal with that. So this is an important time to really start to evaluate which things in your life you are able to bring into manifestation and which ones you have to let go of. Okay? Again, not a pop new age type of perspective, because the again, pop new age prediction unfortunately is very much rooted in capitalism, in that capitalistic mindset of number goes up indefinitely, right? We've been trained through that new age movement to say we have endless possibilities, endless resources, endless this, endless that. We treat the earth as this endless piggy bank where we turn resources, quote unquote, life, we turn other sentient beings into materials, right? Think about that for a minute. And in the society that we live in, we think that is unlimited, that this generous mother is just going to keep giving and giving and giving without asking anything in return, which is true on some level, but it is only true if we become the stewards of it, if we take care of it, if we recognize that, hey, mother is exhausted right now, she needs to rest, right? Mother has been milked dry and she needs to recover her fertility. Like if we understood that, rather than just completely desecrating the body that feeds us, we would have a much more sustainable type of understanding. We would have more equality in the world. We would have, I think, more happiness. I really do. I really feel that. I feel like for all the abundance that we've created through this system that we are a part of, I don't know if we're really that happy. I know I'm not really happy within that system. And my happiness doesn't come from that system. It comes from other things. It comes from the appreciation of things that aren't necessarily a part of that. That doesn't mean I haven't benefited from some parts of the system. We've all benefited from some system or another, and we've all probably suffered from one system or another. So these are just ways of thinking about how do we go into this new moon understanding loss, sacrifice, willing sacrifice, but also the flip side of that is the next decan that comes after Gemini 3 is Cancer 1. And Cancer 1 is all about love. And Cancer 1 is all about what ignites the flames of love, what ignites the emotions, the emotional attachment to something, what ignites our appreciation of something enough that we're willing to protect it, that we're willing to nurture it and give it form, that we're willing to feed it, that we're willing to protect it, that we're willing to care for it. That's the flip side of this. So if you can think about the sacrifice as not just what are you giving up right now, but what are you clearing room to actually protect? This is something you learn as a gardener. When you start gardening, you overplant the garden. Everybody does it. Every single gardener does it. They're like, oh, if one tomato plant in a 4 foot square foot area, it will give me this amount of tomatoes. What if we put 7 in a 4 foot square area? And because 7 is more than 1. But what you learn is that each of those 7 plants will be less productive than the 1 plant that you put in that 4 square feet of garden space that is allowed to reach its full potential. 7 tomato plants will not reach their full feeding potential in that small of a space. So that's what we're talking about here. And sometimes as a gardener, you have to weed the garden. Even with native pollinator habitat gardening, as such as my partner and I practice in our space, there are certain natives that get a little bit out of control, get a little bit lusty for space, and you have to take them out so you can make space for the other things that are already there. Same thing in our lives. There are certain projects that get lusty for our resources, for our space, and for our time. And we have to be able to weed those things out. We have to be the executioner's sword for some of those things. I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of living above my complexity ceiling because I have so many ideas. I have Venus and Gemini, second decan, where I just have a profusion of ideas all the time, right? And I having a little bit of neurodivergence too. Sometimes one of the challenges that both my partner and I have is something called time blindness. We don't always properly estimate the amount of time something is going to take us. So we will often overcommit and try to do things above our complexity ceiling. And that can lead to burnout. That can lead to frustration. That can lead to like a feeling that, oh my God, why can't we ever finish anything? It's, well, because you're trying to do too many things at once. The other thing that we often do too is we have more ideas than sometimes our resources can support. We live a little bit frugally, and we have a lot of things that we would like to do. Like we would like to do more gardening things. We would like to trim some of the trash trees in our backyard. We'd like to fix some of the things that are falling apart in a 140-year-old house that we live in. But sometimes those things add up, and we may have to make a lot of choices about what we're going to do with our resources. Like right now we have, oh man, so many projects, but probably 4 or 5 projects that are all like expensive, and we might be able to do one with the resources that we have. And each one of them feels equally as important, but they're really not. You have to say which one of these is like the most important thing for this season and for the resources you have this season. And then the other ones would say they can wait. They're going to have to wait. You might not have a choice. Or, and this is very important, this is where the flexibility of Gemini comes in. If you don't have the resources, aka the money, to do something that you want to do in the way that the first approach that you will take to it, how can you say what's an alternative way to achieve the same outcome but with a different method? Here's an example of this. I want to trim a bunch of trees in my backyard. We've got a bunch of trash trees that have grown really tall, and they're blocking out the sun that I want to create for my garden, the light that I want to create for my garden. In our minds, we've got a pole saw, but we can only get so high. We really need to get a lot higher. We have a lean-to ladder, but it feels kind of dangerous, and I'm a little nervous getting up on it. So in my mind, I'm like, I need a 20-foot A-frame ladder, which is much more stable. I need a helmet so I can get up there and like cut things down, and I'm safe and doing it in a way that isn't going to be like unstable. Well, have you ever priced out 20-foot A-frame ladders? They're like $1,500. Like, so, and if I'm going to use that twice a year, maybe, probably not the greatest investment of my limited resources. You know, that could also be money that could be used to take out asphalt, like another project we want to do, to be able to plant garden in that space. The alternative to that is maybe there's a way to get that ladder somewhere else. Maybe there's a neighbor we could borrow it from. Maybe there's a rental place where we could purchase it for a day for $100 and then give it back and do what we need to do. Do you see what I mean? There's alternatives to think about. That's where the co-creative unlimitedness can come into the play. When we don't dictate to the universe the exact form that everything has to be in, which we often do, and we say, I have this feeling and this intention that I want to get out into the world. I was having this discussion with my daughter after seeing a beautiful reel about this on Instagram, and she made a nice reel about it, talking about it. When we come into alignment with the feeling of satisfaction, of peace, of abundance, of completion, and we release the attachment to dictating the terms, that's when we can start co-creating in a way that is magical. to me. So you might say, well, I don't have enough money to do this project. That's you dictating that you need money to do the project. If you say, I want this project to be completed, you're opening up room and space for you to say, well, maybe a neighbor could be the facilitator of that. Maybe a neighbor has a 20-foot ladder that they just never use, and you could borrow it for a day. Or you could like go rent the ladder. Do you see what I'm saying? Or maybe someone has a tree service or something like that. Maybe there's all sorts of alternatives. And same thing with when we're talking about manifestation magic. How do you come into alignment with the feeling of satisfaction and peace that we think that the money will bring us? Oftentimes it will. Money is a good solution for things. But if you get the money and it isn't actually solving a problem, then you've just created more problems. So how do we come into alignment with the feelings and the intentions of what we want to create and open ourselves up to the magic of co-creation? Lisa's here. What's up, Lisa? How you doing? It's been a little bit since we've chatted. I hope everything's going well your way, my friend, and that life is treating you well. Ani says, thanks for the reminder to prune my seedlings. There you go. So that's part of the gardening process. Oftentimes, like let's say we're planting tomato seeds, they will suggest that you plant more seedlings in a small little container than you are actually planning on growing, because some of them will come to fruition, some of them won't. Some of them might be duds, and you don't want to just have a space where you have one seed that you planted, it's a dud, and then you just don't have anything. If you have 4 of them, you can get rid of the tops, and the root structure beneath is still viable, and you could pick the healthiest one. And this is true when we're picking the healthiest projects in our life right now too. This is something I like to do in my sessions with clients too. It's not just an astrology session. Oftentimes it's how do we make a plan? This is the Virgo part of me that comes in. How do we make a plan to get you from point A to point B? A lot of the discussion that I have in my sessions is not just, let me tell you about what's happening in the sky. I will do that. I will contextualize it in that language. But I will ask, what resources do you have right now? How much time do you have? How much physical resources do you have? What skills do you have? Is that matching up with the responsibilities that you have in your life? What commitments do you already have? What was your story about your competency in your youth? What is the trauma that you received? How can we dismantle that so that you can move forward? These are all sort of like, they're life coaching type of things that come through a session. And when we have the language of astrology to interweave with that, it becomes really powerful because you can see some of the themes. Like let's say, for example, someone has Saturn in this decan. One of the lessons that they may have to learn is, how do you start to weed out projects that are too overwhelming? How do we stop spreading ourselves too thin? Okay, like that, it might be say the way that you create discipline in your life is saying, I have to choose. I can't do everything right now. That is something that when a client comes to you, they may not be making that connection, right? And then when we see Saturn in this decan, or if this new moon is on your natal Saturn, friends, it may be activating that need for you to choose. Okay. All right. So let's talk about some other parts of this. Here's some more big picture thoughts. We went on a little bit of a lengthy philosophical journey with that, but I like it. I like where we were going with it. Hopefully it was helpful for you. There's a couple features of this that I think are important. The new moon is conjoining a fixed star called Alnilam. Now, Alnilam is a star in the belt. I believe it's in Orion's belt. And it is a star that is related to holding things together. Like a belt holds your pants up, right? It holds things together. Alnilam, according to some of the fixed star experts out there, Bernadette Brady amongst others, it's kind of like someone who holds things together. Now, I have some experience with this fixed star. It is my heliacal rising star. For those of you who have studied fixed star astrology, heliacal rising is one that is sort of some something you're moving towards in your life, something that you are maybe growing towards, or some gifts and abilities that you can perpetuate within your life. So one of the things that I've had to learn how to do and be, and embody, is being glue that holds things together. If there's some situation that is chaotic, sometimes by getting involved, I can stabilize that situation like a belt. If someone's pants are falling down, I like, here, I'm the belt. I'm going to hold your pants up, right? That's kind of the Al Nilam energy. So this new moon, I think if we think about and we connect what we just talked about as far as having to make a choice, of having to learn what projects we want to commit to, which ones we can't commit to, how can we seek alternatives to get the things done if we don't have everything we need, right? Sometimes that's through mutual aid and benefit with one another, helping each other. But then the other part of this is, how can you stabilize the things that you are wanting to commit to? How do you put the metaphorical belt on and say, you know what, this is in danger. These pantalones are in danger of falling down. This project is in danger of falling apart and exposing us, right? Like, how do we stabilize it? How do we keep it together? And there's lots of different ways to think about how to do that. But this one could be really fruitful for understanding how to stabilize situations and projects that we really want to move forward with in our life. The new moon is also sextiling Venus and trining Pluto. Not in a super tight aspect to either one, because it's past already, but by whole sign, it is making aspects to those planets. So we have Saturn making a positive sextile to the lunation. So we may be aware of our limitations. We may be having to think about what our values are with Saturn in the second decan of Aries and committing to those values. I think this is another thing that Saturn is asking us to do, is say, once you've identified who you are, your royal decrees, I guess you could say, how do you commit to them? How do you make them real in your life? This is something that I think about all the time. Like, for me, if I just give an example, I'm committed to being a good steward of the land that I live on. And to make my dream a reality, I need to heal or change or nurture. I don't even know if it's change, it's nurture the space that I inhabit. And I've done that through planting trees, plants, of removing turf grass, which is completely useless in many different faculties. It takes up resources, it dries out, it doesn't support any of the life on this planet. So for me to be a supporter of life on this planet, I need to create the right conditions for that life to thrive. We've planted a lot of milkweed. We had a number of monarch caterpillars on the milkweed this week, which was exciting. In the past, I felt like I needed to get involved. I had one season where any caterpillar that I found, I would come inside and try to make it, support it to its full chrysalis stage. I've since learned is a thing. Oftentimes we have good intentions, but we may have negative consequences to those intentions. I've since learned that if you do that, there's two things that you're doing. If you raise them indoors, you are stopping their natural ability to adjust to light, and you might mess with their migration, because like monarchs and butterflies and things like that, they have a migration pattern. You also might be taking away food from the food chain. Like, some of those caterpillars are food for birds. Some of those caterpillars aren't strong enough to survive in the wild and perish. Like we were talking about today, some projects aren't strong enough to survive. If you try to bring every weak project to fruition, oftentimes it's going to dilute the strength of your work. Same thing when you try to take a caterpillar out of the wild and raise it and then release it. You're reducing the strength and the resiliency of that species. That doesn't mean you can't help. What I've learned is that the best thing that you can do is plant more habitat, so that there's more ability and more food for those caterpillars, those butterflies, to be able to propagate. right? And then leave them alone. See what I mean? So I've done what I could do. I created the environment, and then I let nature do the last part of it. I don't have to interfere in their work. I undid the human part where the human beings destroyed their habitat. I undid that and restored it back to its natural condition so that nature could take over and do what it wants to do. And I think that this is something that is an embodiment of a value that like we have, that all life is sacred and that we should work with nature rather than try to dominate it or see it as a piggy bank, and making it real by taking whatever energy resources and putting it into restoring that habitat, even in just a small bit. Like this is what one of my favorite authors, J.R.R. Tolkien, calls the eucatastrophe, the good catastrophe. Like the eagles coming to rescue Frodo and Sam on Mount Doom. It's like the rescue when all things look bleak. Think of the butterflies that see seas and seas and seas of turf grass. They can't eat it. They can't lay their eggs on it. And then they see your beautiful little island of milkweed. And it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is perfect. This is an oasis. And every time you plant something like that, you become the eucatastrophe, the good catastrophe that leads to a positive outcome for those species. So what in your life, this new moon, can you say, these are my values, and now I'm going to try to make this real. I'm gonna put this into reality. I'm gonna castrate the rest of the possibilities that aren't my values, and I'm gonna say, this is what I believe in, and I'm gonna make it real. The trine to Venus, one of the things we'll talk about if you stick around long enough, like we will kind of take the new moon out into the next couple weeks ahead and talk about some of how the astrology is going to unfold. But one of the things that's happening in this lunar cycle is Venus is going to be moving into Leo. And it is going, at this new moon on Sunday, Venus will have ingressed into Leo by, it's going to ingress tomorrow morning as I'm recording this on what's the date today? The 12th. So it ingresses on the 13th of June. And that will shift our focus Venusian-wise to how do we utilize our spotlights? How do we utilize our willpower? How do we feel comfortable being our most authentic self? And maybe we feel some pressure to be our more of our authentic self. There will be some tension, okay, because of Venus making an opposition to Pluto. As these planets move into Leo, they're all going to oppose the Pluto in Aquarius. To me, this is the tension between visibility and invisibility. It might feel dangerous to feel visible in certain ways right now, especially with the rise of authoritarianism, the rise of surveillance technology, the rise of censorship. I think this is a lot of what we don't quite understand, or a lot of people didn't make the connection with Pluto and Aquarius, or just Aquarius in general. Smart people did. Joy Usher made that connection in her beautiful book, A Tiny Universe, where she talks about the ability of Saturn and then subsequently Aquarius to censor one particular or many narratives and only allow one particular narrative to be the dominant narrative. And this is what we've seen over and over and over again in the last few years, is only one narrative being allowed to see the day of light, or the light of day, excuse me. So when we are seeing these planets moving into Leo, we are starting to say, how do we maintain our individuality, okay, our diversity? Because as an individual, we are all diverse individuals. The other thing that is dangerous about Pluto moving through Aquarius is the push towards homogenization. This is one of the fundamental, I think, challenges between political ideologies of left, right, conservative, liberal, etc., is the more inherently, I think that in left-leaning politics, people are supportive of diversity, supportive of the ability to be different. Whereas the observation of more conservative politics says that there is a elimination of that and a push towards homogenization. Now, there is nuance through all of this, okay? Nuance through all of this. But that the rise of more authoritarian type of things that are pushing towards homogenization might make it feel dangerous to be an individual. And this is all coming in the midst of Pride Month, right? Where a lot of the like trans rights, LGBTQ plus rights are under threat. There has been a rollback in some of the laws that have been protecting people who choose and are embodiment of something different than the mainstream. And that can feel really, that can produce anxiety, that can produce fear, and rightfully so. Like, I think that there is some real challenging things right now where, you know, the support of diversity, it's hard. It's just, I kind of just am incredulous at this whole direction that we're going as a society, because when you support diversity, it doesn't really mean that the people who are doing the opposite of that can't do what they can't be themselves necessarily. But if you look at the other, I'm not articulating this very smoothly, but if you lean into the more like homogenization angle, you're literally eliminating someone else's right to be themselves, literally trying to just completely eliminate them. And that's just toxic. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is not really a agree to disagree thing there. One ideology eliminates someone's ability to exist. The other is just saying, hey, you can exist and I can exist, and things like that. So that's my long-winded way of saying happy Pride. I support all of you. And I hope that we can find ways to navigate our ability to be the most authentic version of ourselves, right? When whatever that means to you. And I think this is part of what's baked into this new moon as well. And I think that this is baked into how we're navigating our commitment to our own values and how we're trying to deal with the suppression of individuality in service of, I don't know, profit. Like, I think they want homogenization and surveillance and elimination of diversity because it's easier to control people if you've funneled them all into one specific category. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's just, just makes me nauseous. A couple other things. Mercury and the moon in mutual reception. So that is a fancy term where we have, how can I say this briefly? I can't say anything briefly. The planet has what's called a guest-host relationship. In traditional astrology, a planet was a steward for a sign. A sign was like its land or its temple. And in this case, Mercury is the steward of Gemini. And, well, not in this case. In every case, Mercury is the steward of Gemini. The moon is the steward of Cancer. And in this case, they are exchanging households. Okay, Mercury is in Cancer, moon is in Gemini. So there's this secret connection between them, this ability to help each other behind the scenes. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about Mercury's condition. Mercury is also this new moon in malefic enclosure. So that is a term that refers to any type of aspect from Saturn and Mars to a planet that kind of forces it into a rock and a hard place type of experience, where one aspect of Mars or Saturn is on one side of the planet and the other aspect or ray is on the other side. And we have that condition right now. And I'll show you this when we get to the chart. But there's pressure from a lot of different directions right now with Mercury in malefic enclosure. We feel like we are stuck. Personally, anecdotally, I have this in my own chart. I have this baked into my natal chart. My Mercury is retrograde in Cancer in the 12th house, being enclosed by both malefics in Virgo from the second. It's the second house ruler. Those are in the second house. It's the ruler of the 11th house. It probably has contributed to some of my challenges with my finances, with like some of my beliefs around I don't know, security and abundance, maybe feeling a little bit outside of the acceptance of the group because it's the ruler of my 11th house too. I've always a little bit felt like an outsider, no matter what group I was a part of. Like, even though I was discussing this with my partner, like in a lot of ways, I'm very, very blessed materially and otherwise and socially. So a lot of it is because it's in the 12th house, it's more in my head, you know? And I think that with Mercury and malefic enclosure in this circumstance, it might be the ideas that we are backing ourselves into a corner with, right? It might be that we're not seeing alternatives where there could be. That's why I spent some time today talking about how do we think about things differently? How do we think about, well, instead of saying, well, I don't have money for this, how about saying, I don't have money for this, but that doesn't mean it can't get done. Maybe I can rely on friends. Maybe I can see something in a different perspective. I would say that the malefic enclosure that I've experienced has forced me to think of things differently. It's as a young person growing up with Mercury in Cancer 3, where the decan speaks towards scarcity versus surplus. I had a lot of different circumstances where I experienced both luxury and the lack of it, or the guilt for that luxury. This is another thing I was reading about today via Austin Kopic. Sometimes we experience the pain of not having something in Cancer 3. Other times we experience extreme guilt because we understand that while we have something, someone else might not. I think that I've gone through a little bit of both. The guilt part of it is really difficult for me. I think that I'm giving you an insight into my own mind around it to maybe help you understand why we might be experiencing some negative thinking around something. For me, I had one kind of wealthy set of parents or family that was very excessive with their wealth. They believed that wealth would bring them happiness. Ultimately, it absolutely did not. It destroyed their family. So there was one version of that I was seeing, like this excessive, grotesque use of it. And then there was another family that was very, very frugal. And I got shuttled back and forth between those two households since I was 2 years old. Okay. So I would get like spoiled and luxuriated upon in the excessive household. And then I'd come back to the frugal household and they'd be like, what is this? This is terrible. Like, give me that. Like, that's just, you're spoiled. You're so spoiled. It's just like can you imagine just the programming something like that installs, the button that installs of like, oh no, like if anything good comes to me, I'm a bad kid. You know what I mean? Like, that's the narrative that like a malefic enclosure of Mercury in the 12th in the excesses of Cancer 3 can work on you, right? And there's a little bit of a different nuance to this malefic enclosure, but some of the things are similar. Because it's in Cancer, Mercury is in the second decan of Cancer in malefic enclosure here, which is about how do we protect something and nurture it to its fullest potential. And it has a lot of pressure from Saturn in Aries 2 and Mars in Taurus 3. Okay, so maybe there is circumstances that are outside of our control, like where we have to have humility in the face of nature with Mars and Taurus 3, and our commitment to our values, Saturn and Aries 2. Both of those things are sort of at odds with our ability to either communicate in a nurturing and loving way, which is the superpower of Mercury in Cancer 2, or to nurture something to its fullest potential. We might be too attached to a value that isn't manifestable. We might also just be cast about by circumstances outside of our control. Here's something that's outside of many people's control right now. The United States is at war with Iran. That is outside of many people's control. Now, that doesn't mean that people haven't had a hand in either voting for an administration that carried that out, or that their tax money is going towards that or something of that nature. But for most average Americans, they're not really in support of that. They don't want it to happen. They're not choosing that. And it's having an effect on them financially, morally, philosophically. And those are the types of things that you can't always anticipate. Now, there will be arrogant astrologers that are like, I can anticipate that. I saw war coming a mile away, blah, blah, blah. Look at me, poof, ego. And what good does that do us, right? Yes, we can predict some negativity in the collective or some positive things in the collective. But understanding that there will be circumstances outside of the average person's control with like Mars in Taurus 3 is understanding that there will be humility in the face of natural forces that are bigger than us, or any forces that are bigger than us. Same thing can be true when we see a severe weather event. I had a friend I've been talking to people via this game I've been playing. It's called Sky. It's a really nice game. It's really cooperative and there's some beautiful elements to it. But you can chat with people all over the world. And I've been kind of getting to know people from other countries, and I have a friend in the Philippines, and there was an earthquake in the Philippines. Not something that you would normally be able to predict. It was a big, nasty earthquake, and it really like disrupted daily life there. And that's something that wasn't necessarily in that individual's control. And that could be putting a damper, for example, on, let's say that they had a project that they wanted to nurture. All right, let's say they had a garden in their backyard, and an earthquake came and destroyed the building and the structure. And instead of putting their resources into nurturing that garden, they had to put their resources into repairing the damage to the foundation of their home. That's the type of thing that happens to us sometimes, right? That's the type of thing that we can kind of see that could be out of our control. It could be putting pressure on a planet like Mercury. Venus is opposite Pluto is forming, Venus opposition to Pluto. I think we talked about that a little bit, but our ability to wield our authenticity, to wield a spotlight, could be coming right up against the fear of censorship or the fear of being homogenized into a system or technology that we don't agree with. A lot of conversations have been about artificial intelligence lately and the data centers. Those of you who followed along on the channel know that I'm very much opposed to those data centers and to the advent of especially generative AI for many, many reasons, whether they are environmental reasons or for like the atrophying of our creative brains reasons, or the stealing of artists' work reasons, all sorts of reasons. I don't have to go into my manifesto about that right now, but I think that there will be more conversations about your individual will versus the overarching power structures that might want to suppress that individual will. And I think that that's going to be part of the summer conversation that's going to be playing out. Uranus is at the bending of the nodes. So Uranus is squaring the north and the south node. We're at a turning point with our communication and with our technology, with how many projects we can manifest. Just piggybacking off of the AI conversation, there's been a lot of pushback on the expansion of data centers and things like that. Like communities are saying, no, we don't want these. Aaron Brockovich, I shared a reel on Instagram the other day. Aaron Brockovich started a website where you can report whether a data center is being built in your area, and you can report whether it's having negative consequences for your quality of life, for your water, for your noise, for your natural systems. There's a lot of pushback that's happening. And Uranus is at a point where we are getting to the peak of expansion, right? The north bending, the peak of increase, and this fantasy of increase, right? With it being at the bending of the Pisces north node. And we're starting to move towards the south node in Virgo. It's like, how much of this can our ecosystems actually support? There are data centers around that are like the size of like an elementary school basement, and some of those support the internet that we use today. But the ones that I'm talking about that are super abusive are the ones that are the size of Manhattan that they want to put in Utah, where it's raising the temperature at night by, anywhere between 5 and 25 degrees, and just completely destroying their water table and things like that. Those are egregious excesses, right? So I think that there is a way to figure out how we can move forward responsibly. I don't know. I don't think that it's inevitable, though. I don't think all of this is inevitable. As much as people want to tell you that it's inevitable, we still have ability to make choices about how we're going to move forward with this technology. But this is a turning point, especially with Uranus at the bending of the nodes. Okay, so those are sort of our big picture philosophical things. Let's talk more about some of the details. Before I do so, do me a huge favor, friends. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, take a little stretch. I like to get some water, get a stretch out going. Go visit me over at spencermichaud.com and on my social medias. At Spencer Michaud on Instagram and Blue Sky and wherever you get your social media. Go visit Third Coast Mojo. She has some great stuff over there. Tanya does amazing work. Really puts a lot of her love and wisdom and intention into those. But I would say if you like what you hear on Spencer Michaud Astrology, you like the thoroughness and the detailed analysis, I would say Tanya puts just as much of that care and attention into her magical workings. This is why we are a team. This is why we respect each other and feel that we are co-creating and equal partners in our relationship, is because of that commitment. So really go support her if you need help astrologically. And you can also find me on my website if you want to reach out for a reading. All of those things really do help us continue to do this work. So find me at spencermichaud.com. Find Tanya at Third Coast Mojo on Etsy. If you want to support the work I'm doing here today, you can purchase a super chat or go to buymeacoffee.com. Okay. All right, let's keep going. What do you say? Lisa says, they are trying to build a data center in my town. The governor may put a 1-year moratorium on data centers in New York. I, as well as many others, are pushing back. I am concerned, to say the least. Lisa, unfortunately, your story is not unique. That is not to say I don't commiserate with you. I absolutely do. I'm just saying that this is a real problem in a lot of communities. Mine in Michigan as well. In Southeast Michigan, within like a 20-mile radius of where I live, there's like at least 5 data centers that have been proposed or in various levels of being built. 5 in a 20-mile square radius. Like, for whatever reason, our governor has doubled down on the AI boom, which is really unfortunate because she did a lot of really good things before this, and it's feeling like we're being sold out to her corporate interests and desire to maybe raise political funds for maybe a presidential run or something like that. It's very, very frustrating. But I will say there has been pushback there. I think regardless of all of that, it is important to keep pushing back, to show up at your community meetings. We had a similar moratorium here in Ypsilanti there's a place called Willow Run where they wanted to build the data center right next to a really vulnerable community. And the utilities, this is one way that people are fighting back. The utility company, Yucca or something like that, said, we're not going to give you water like for a year. Like, we're not going to allow you to have the resources to actually run this thing. And it's a big fight between the community and the invested interest from the University of Michigan, who's very powerful in my area, Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti area. They have a lot of resources. They've partnered with OpenAI, with the Sam Altman company. I think that there might be some stuff from Anthropic coming here too. There's a huge one in Saline, which is a community that's pretty close to us too, that they've already started breaking ground on, despite people in the community not wanting it at all. So this is really this is going to be one of the big fights of our time, Lisa, as community members, as stewards of this planet. This is going to be one of the big things that we have to reckon with as a community, because there is big corporate interest in racing to be the company. That's why they don't want to regulate this. Everybody wants to be the company to profit from all of this. And they're not taking consideration into consideration the ramifications of their actions. In fact, they're trying to suppress any criticism of that. And it's up to people like us, Lisa, to keep raising that awareness and to keep pushing back, because if we just give up, we're just, who knows what could happen with that. Like, we're going to be in like the water wars, you know, just because someone wants to make a generative AI picture of like their cat dancing or something like that. You know, it's just not a good trade, you know, or even if it's not that, it's the desire for large corporate interests to be able to surveil every single part of our lives so that they can sell us products and crush dissent. So the stakes are pretty high when we talk about these things. It's not just the fucking cat dancing videos. It's not the fact that we have lost any touch with the process. So we're only attached to results, right? It's that, yeah, this is going to be helping to fund systems of our own oppression. So fight back now before Skynet gets built. You know what I mean? If you've seen Terminator, like, this is the time that we have to figure this out before all of the infrastructure is in place and it's too late. Okay. We should keep talking about it though. This is something this is the grounding of the symbols. You know, some people are like, just talk about astrology. Why are you talking about this stuff? What are we doing if we're not talking about the issues that affect us through the language of the planets? You know, this is us trying to reckon with our lived reality, not our idealistic reality, the reality that we're living. And if we can get context through this beautiful oracular study, then I think we're honoring that tradition rather than just, bastardizing it. Ani says, that's why I'm not sticking around Salt Lake City, already too polluted, and the data center will make it so much worse for the entire valley. Yeah, like, Ani's right on ground zero for this, right? I don't think people understand this if they haven't been paying attention. Like, I know that my algorithm is showing me all these things now because I've engaged with it. But for those of you who aren't like hip to this, they're trying to put a data center that's the size of Manhattan. Do you know how big Manhattan is? It's like 1,000 football fields in Utah, right? Like, that's crazy. That is insane. The disruption with the noise, with the amount of water that it'll take. And people are like, well, it's a closed loop system. Fuck that. You know how they make it a closed loop system? From utilizing chemicals, PFAS, that leak out of that system and into the groundwater. So it's not a good argument. It makes a bunch of noise pollution to the point where almost 100 decibels. Like, if you're living next to this thing, you're never going to sleep again. Okay. It's destroying any local wildlife habitat. It is not working with nature. It is destroying nature for what? For profit, for control, and all of this stuff. It's not good. And stop using it. That's the first thing that you can do. Stop fucking using it, and then start being vocal about it and pushing back on your community leaders, and be vocal about it. Don't just say, well, I hope we don't do this. No, you get up there and you say it with your full chest like we are today. Ben says, this is why I love your channel so much. You're so good at running our current state of the state through your preferred filter. Appreciate that, Ben. And yeah, we all have our filters. I think it's important to acknowledge that we are filtering it through our own values and belief systems as astrologers. I think it is impossible not to do that. I try to be as balanced as I can. I try to be as open-minded to as many different worldviews as I can. There are certain lines that I have, though, that are important to me as an individual, and having any platform, I'm going to speak up about it. Like, to me, this is the hill that I'm willing to defend, or to die on, I guess you could say. I hope I don't die on it, but I hope that the protection of this beautiful planet is my line. The protection of our natural beauty, resources, the protection of sentient life, that is so a fundamental core of my being. It's literally in my DNA. I come from a family of biologists, of conservationists. Like my great grandfather was a biology and conservation professor at Purdue, and who I don't know if I've mentioned this on the channel before, but he spent so much of his life trying to protect the Indiana state forests, and as a naturalist, and through his working with people like Aldo Leopold and John Muir, that they gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award at the White House for his service to conservation. He met Al Gore at the White House saying, like, hey, you did some good stuff here. Like, congratulations. So it's just ingrained in me, right? It's in my blood. So I have to keep speaking up about it. But thank you, Ben. And yes, I try to contextualize it into what we are living. And this is the thing too. I am very much open to hearing what your lived experience is in the chat. What is your lived experiences of this? We don't always agree with everything that everyone says in the chat, but we open it up as a dialogue and as a discussion to figure out how this is how a society, a functioning society, works. It's not saying it's my way or the highway. It's like, how do we learn to coexist with one another while still staying true to most, hopefully, of our fundamental core values? And that's why we have discussions. That's why we talk about this. That's why we even have a chat. There's so many people that could get on this and say, I'm just going to tell you how the astrology is going to be, and it's going to be my perspective, and we're not going to have any discussion about it. I've seen tons of that. I don't like doing it like that, because I want to hear and respond to other people's lived realities rather than just my own. And I hope that we can do that as communities. But Ben, appreciate you. And I think that you're a good thinker when it comes to a lot of these things too. So thanks for being here, friend. Ani says, I don't support AI slop, and you shouldn't either. There you go. I love it. Right there with you. Lisa says, the noise alone is enough for me. Me too. I'm really sensitive to noise. And I really struggle with I live at a crossroad. I live at a stoplight. It's really noisy. You can't hear it that much because I have a really good noise canceling microphone. But man, if there was just hum of like a generator hum that was 100 decibels loud constantly, it would drive me literally insane. And some people can't afford to move. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've invested their entire lives in these communities, and it's just grotesque to see that they are being displaced or being abused by the system. Ani says, not just in Utah, upwind from Salt Lake City in the valley, then ruin the Salt Lake. Oh yeah, it's bad. It's bad. Linda says, operative word is sentient, not narcissistic psychopaths. Can you expand on that, Linda? Like, I'm a little bit behind in the chat, so maybe give me some more context for that. But yes, sentience is important, and we don't want to support narcissistic psychopaths, whether it's a part of us or we see it in leadership or whatnot. I agree. Ani says, get ready to live in an N95 mask like fire season, but 24/7 and more toxic. That is one possible outcome that we've learned from science fiction and from the way things are going on some level. I don't think it has to be that way. I think that the flip side of us calling out the dangers of, I don't know, not considering holistic consequences of our actions is that we also get to decide how we can visualize a better future, a different reality than that. I think it's equally important to put as much mental energy into that. Once you've seen what you don't want, how do we put energy into what we do want? what I want to see is native pollinator habitat. I want to see forests protected. I want to drink clean water. I want to breathe clean air. I want equality for people on this earth. I want economic equality. I want social equality. I want all of those things. And how do we start visualizing those and making louder the stories when that is happening, just as loud as when we have the opposite of it? So if you're sharing these things on your socials, give equal time, I think, to the calling out of the bullshit and the visualization of what you do want to create. I think that's really part of a key. That's a key turnaround, because if you're constantly marinating in the negativity, it's exhausting. And then our nervous system burns out. And then we're like, what are we actually fighting for? So how do we balance that out? That's our Gemini message here. Ani says, when we die, we will die on this hill if we don't defend it. Doesn't leave a lot of options. Resist or leave. I'm leaving. Good luck to those who are stuck. Not my fight. I mean, Ani, maybe that's another, I don't know, like, maybe that's another reason to stay. Maybe it's a reason because you are a fighter to stay in that community and be the change that you want to see there. Maybe you are the defender of the people that don't have the type of articulateness that you have, or the will to fight for those things. I could see it both ways. I could also understand not just wanting to get out of Dodge too. But I will say this. I had fantasies, friends, in my mid 30s of going off the grid, buying a little 5-acre farm, and getting away from all the corruption of the city and all the noise and all the BS and just not being part of the system. I got really close. We put an offer in on a 5-acre farm in a little community south of us. And what we found was a report in the house. We got the keys before, like 2 weeks before it was finalized, because there was a bunch of garbage in the house that we were like, we'll clean it out. We want to move in here. And we found a bunch of documents of like a failed water report where in the late 90s, someone had dumped 2,500 gallons of VOC, like paint thinner, in like 55-gallon drums, a few properties away. And it was completely going into the water table. And one person that lived in the house previously died of cancer. The other was having the property sold by their children because they had dementia. And we looked at that and we're like, can't do it. We got to back out of this. Like this, it was never cleaned up. We did our research too. It was a Superfund site. And the Superfund is supposed to clean up those things. They ran out of money before they got to that place. And they only found out about it is because like later on, these chemicals were dumped in the late 70s. And they only found out about it in the early aughts, late 2000s, because AT&T was trying to dig new telecommunication lines, and their workers were passing out. So long story short, sometimes we think that we can just run away from the problems, and we are so interconnected that wherever you go, there you are. And those issues will still be there. And I've had to learn that my place is here. There was a lot of reasons that I didn't understand at the moment of why I was here. And now I do. And I think that is something that's really important to think about as we move forward. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone has to stay in the situation that they're unhappy in. I think that sometimes we can be happy making a new start and being rebirthed in a lot of ways. But if you think that you're going to escape some of these challenges, I think that what we've learned from Lisa and Ani and everyone else today is that this is happening all over, and you're not going to be able to escape it. That we have to face it head on. Okay. Definitely not ED. Not defending UT politics are more corrupt than the Southeast. Yeah, could see that. Okay, so let's keep going. So we're trying to contextualize. Much of that discussion started because we're trying to contextualize the astrology that we're experiencing. We've got some really volatile stuff coming in the summer. We'll talk about that a little bit. But we've got to move forward here. Ani says they got themselves in this mess, just moving on just a matter of time, already struggling with pollination symptoms. Sure. Pollution symptoms. Sure. I can see that. I don't have a great answer for that right away. That's something to keep. Every situation is going to be different. If you're in a situation where you don't have any other choice and you got to take care of yourself, like, I don't think anyone's going to be upset about or hold you to task. What I am saying, though, is that these problems are going to spread, and there will not be a place where we can escape this. And so we will have to deal with it one way or the other. All right. So Sun and Moon in Gemini 3. We've talked about this kind of at length, but let's just look at the Gemini 3 flashcard. We've got the 10 of Swords here. So here you see the death, kind of the death of one choice, one option, one twin, etc. We've got the Daimon Praxidike. One feature of this decan is there's a million fixed stars that are astrologically relevant within it, which I think is appropriate because part of the themes of this decan are too many ideas, too many options. So I think we've analyzed this enough, so let's keep going. Yeah, Ani says, true. I love that saying, wherever you go, there you are. I have found that to be the case because I can't escape myself. Wherever I've gone, there I've been. And as someone who thought that he could escape himself by moving somewhere quieter, more peaceful, with different neighbors or whatever, it doesn't exist. So I had to change my perspective. I had to change myself. And instead of being someone who was just irritated by every sound, every inconvenience around me, I've had to learn to start reaching out to my neighbors and becoming the peacemaker, becoming the connector, becoming the steward of this land, rather than feeling like, oh, I have to leave this place or whatever. And that's made a huge difference. And I really feel, it's not perfect, but I feel much more comfortable because I've contributed to the environment in a positive way. And I've contributed to the social fabric of my little block, like I've been a peacemaker with neighbors. I've helped some of my neighbors with some problems and they've helped me. And we've gotten to know each other and we've built trust and mutual respect so that if there is a problem, we can fix it together rather than get into conflicts. Ani says, I like my own company better sometimes somewhere else, to be fair, though. I mean, some of this is 12th house-ness. I'm a 12th houser, and if you have any 12th house placements, this can be a vibe, right? But again, we'll just fall on the wherever you go, there you are. Like we can't escape ourselves. We can't escape our own belief systems, and I think that that's a positive thing to learn in life, and it'll make our lives a lot easier. All right, so let's move on to the host in Cancer 2. So we have Mercury in Cancer 2. Here you see the 3 of Cups, which is a tarot card that is associated with this decan. And when we're looking at the sun and the moon and a new moon, we have one planet that's hosting both of them. So the sun in Gemini 3 is shining a big spotlight on that which we need to make a choice about, what we can choose to bring into fruition or manifestation, and that which we have to let go of. Okay. The moon isn't super comfortable in this decan. It's a sensitive place, and the black or whiteness of it, the contrast, the high contrast, the all or nothing ultimatum space is not necessarily very comfortable for a lunar body. Lunar energy likes to collect and just kind of says, hey, let's all figure this out together type of thing, right? That's the Cancerian way, through kindness and the sharpness of this decan is a little bit of a weird fit. But Mercury is trying to provide the resources. And Mercury is in the space that says, it's time to ask questions about how do we protect and nurture that which we have chosen into its fullest form. Now, we talked about this at length in the beginning of the show too, where Mercury is in malefic enclosure. So normally, if it wasn't, we would be having maybe some easier conversations about how to nurture the project that we have chosen into its fullest form. But since it's in malefic enclosure, we've got pressure. Like we outline that pressure as circumstances outside of our control, Mars and Taurus 3, and a need to commit to our values, Saturn and Aries 2, or be bound to being maybe more independent than we have been in the past, or more interdependent, right? Rather than codependent. We're being forced to make a new start. We're being forced to stand on our own 2 feet. And that can lead to some choices that Mercury in Cancer 2 might not normally make. If I'm being fully honest and transparent, like, and just kind of working it out through my own lens, if you'll forgive me for that, the overcoming square from Saturn and Aries says you kind of have to look out for yourself a little bit more than you have in the past. The square to my natal sun in Cancer 2 with this decan, and subsequently, like, maybe will help you understand Mercury. Normally, my own well-being is not necessarily my first thought. Sometimes it's nurturing the people around me and giving and being generous and things of that nature. And that doesn't mean we have to stop being that. But there is a part of me in my life right now that's like, man, I really do need to, like, take care of my own affairs. I need to figure out some solutions practically and materially to what I do. And I don't necessarily, I can't keep falling on every single sword for everyone else 24/7. And that's uncomfortable as someone who likes nurturing and taking care of other people. This also could be seen in the fact that I have an early 20s adult that is going off on their own and starting to live their own life. And what that does is that forces you to ask a lot of questions about, well, I've defined a lot of my life around taking care of this person, and now they don't need that help and support in the same fashion. Doesn't mean they never need help or support, but they don't need it in the form that we maybe created identity around. And as a parent, as a dad, as a Cancer dad, like, right, that is something that's like, oh man, I've just spent 2 decades of my life defining myself and my role around being a parent to this person. And now it's a little bit awkward to be like, now what do I do? Who can I take care of? That's like what my brain is doing. Like, who can I nurture? And really, the answer is me. Like, the answer is I got to take care of myself and my partner and my community and all of you. But, like, it starts with taking care of myself so that I have the energy, the resources, the time to give to others. And that is the pressure that we feel with Saturn and the overcoming square, I think, to Mercury here. I think it's really, really important to think about that. Like, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. If we consider our society the plane that's like going, put your oxygen mask on, and then you can put everyone else's on. It doesn't mean we stop. It doesn't mean when we put our oxygen mask on that we're like, fuck you. Like, you can go die in the fiery plane crash. No, once you've got your own mask on, then you start putting everyone else's mask on. Do you see what I mean? I think that's the good way of dealing with Saturn and Cancer and an overcoming square to Mercury is, yeah, you got to put your own oxygen mask on, but it doesn't stop there. Once you have stabilized yourself, you utilize that energy and that security or that knowing and those values to uplift others and to help other people get their oxygen mask on. That's the step that we don't take with this, that we don't think about as much. Ben says, this is so important that cannot be understated. We can serve others so much more effectively if we are of service to the self. 100%. 100%. Yep. This is I think that, and again, we shouldn't stop there. That's the myth that we get in America, is like, I'm okay and fuck you. Like, that's kind of where we stop, right? But it doesn't stop there. It's, you take care of your own business, you take care of your own centeredness, and it's not going to be perfect. Like, it's not going to be perfect. Here's a small example of this, Ben. With Mars in Taurus, I have the moon in Taurus, friend, and whenever Mars is in Taurus, my sleep schedule just gets wrecked. Like, there's some days I can sleep. There's other days I just cannot sleep. And I don't know if it's just anxiety or whatever it is, overthinking things. And I recognize this week that I had a couple days of good sleep. Last night I had good sleep. The day before I had really shit sleep. And just your ability to be present, your ability to be patient is so fluid with the amount of sleep that you've had. I'm a pretty patient person. I'm a lot more patient when I'm well rested. When I haven't slept, I'm kind of like, I can be patient, but there's this point where I'm just like, can you shut up? Like, that's if I'm really tired, like if someone's telling me something, I'm just like, please shut up. Shut up, I can't hear you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Which is not great when your job is like listening to people. Like, so whenever I have client work, just to kind of do the turnaround here, I really make sure that I'm going to sleep on time and that I'm well rested and things like that. But we all have our limits, right? And it's just amazing how when you take care of yourself, you eat well, you go to sleep on time. Like last night, I was tossing and turning until like 4 a.m. and I put on some lavender oil, and I put on some of Tanya's dream oil. Not a sales pitch, but it worked. And I put on some of Sphere and Sundry's yin Asclepius oil, which is really good for sleep. I really like their products in addition to the stuff Tanya does. And I passed out for like 5 more hours, and I got great sleep. So there are ways to that is me practicing self-care in the moment so that I can be present for people in the community like I am today, instead of being like, oh, let me. It's sometimes it's hard doing this work when you're navigating really difficult topics and you're trying to hear people's perspectives from multiple perspectives and things like that. So taking care of your body, taking care of yourself will help you to be in service and better service to others as well. Okay. That mutual reception is interesting to me, though, because there's a secret line of communication between Mercury and the moon. The ability to make choices is being helped by our ability to communicate things in an emotional way that resonates. That's something that Mercury in Cancer 2 is very good at. Communicating, and the power of the words, not to just spark an intellectual response, but to spark an emotional response. That's a superpower of Mercury in Cancer. And this was a superpower that I know that I personally do possess and I'm especially as a musician. I have to be real careful, and for better or for worse. And I don't mean this just to be like, I can make you feel great. I can make you feel like shit too. I have witnessed the cloud. I call it the Cancerian cloud. And Ben, maybe you can confirm this as a fellow Cancer as well. Like when we come into the room, we have, as a cardinal sign, we have the ability to change the emotional energy of the room. And this can be a great power if we are feeling good. If we're feeling like, hey, everybody, how are you? I love you. You're amazing. We can make everyone feel the love. We can also, if we're feeling bad, I mean, if we're coming in the room like this, and we're just like, fuck, I'm just so fucking annoyed today. Everyone's going to feel it. We are just radiating like either rage, depression, discontent, sadness, disapproval. We're just radiating it. Our body language is loud. Okay. So I think that this is another opportunity to tune into, how are you communicating with others? Are you radiating your discontent? Are you adding to the emotional tenor of the room because you yourself are not centered, or because you've spent time on yourself, because you've taken care of your physical needs, your sleep, your food, your need to get a hug every once in a while, or your ability to calm the mind and lower the volume of the chatter that we have. The song I picked for this week was Ray LaMontagne. It's called Beg, Steal, or Borrow. Go check it out if you didn't this week. But it says, it's your hometown's bringing you down. Are you drowning in the small talk and the chatter? And I chose that because Ray LaMontagne is a Gemini 3 sun. He's drowning in the small talk and the chatter in his own mind. And how does he calm that down? It's through his art, it's through his art. So it's a superpower if you're a musician. If you are somebody who can change the emotional energy of a room, that's really powerful if you're an artist. And maybe as an astrologer. Maybe that's why I choose to try as much as I can to be positive and balanced. That skill as Mercury in Cancer native, not just Mercury in Cancer 2, but just Mercury in Cancer in general. If we wanted to be like unapologetic, fear-mongering, like doomsayers on this channel, I can make people afraid. but why would I want to put that into the world all the time? Yes, we have to call truth to like the challenging things in our community, but we have to have the turnaround. You have to be responsible with that power. This is a good message for all of us at this new moon to be responsible with our communication, the emotionality of our communication, because the emotions that we are feeling are going to get communicated whether they're words or not. So take care of yourself so that you are radiating love and acceptance and positivity and solutions rather than fear, anxiety, disapproval, judgment. Doesn't mean that those things aren't going to come up, but witness them, deal with them, journal about them, make art about them, and then start to come back to the things that you want to create out in the world. It's so important. It's going to be so important for this new moon. Okay, so that's really the lunation itself. I'm going to take another little stretch, and then I will take you through the next couple weeks, speed run through the next couple weeks, and make a little bit of commentary. Now that we've got some more information, you can find a deeper dive in the astrology of June. But do me a favor, friends. If you're here and you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. It's easy to do. Turn on the notification bell. Like the video. Okay. Easy to do. It's just one click, and it really helps to get these messages, oracular things, maybe to someone that needs to hear it. Could be someone that you're having a conflict with. Maybe they need to hear this. Maybe they're stuck in their own personal hell and they're making your life hell because of it. And maybe just having the ability to talk it out with us could turn the tide for you and for that other person. You never know. Okay. I've been also doing a lot of stretching lately and foam rolling. If there was a product that wants to sponsor me, like the foam roller that I use, I can't remember the brand, but man, I'll tell you what, when you get into your 40s, your body just gets stiff, and foam rolling just, oh my God, this is really like, it's not really foam. It's like this really hard plastic with some foam around it. It's amazing. And I feel really good when I use it. So foam roll your problems away. Okay. Let's do a little speed run through how this will unfold until we get to the full moon in Capricorn. Okay. So we start off with Venus moving into Leo on the 13th. And let's look at it with it on the screen here. I'm going to give you two. Well, before I do that, we didn't look at the chart at all, but here you could see 24 degrees Gemini, new moon, hosted by Mercury in aversion on each of the planets on each side of the conjunction or of the sign of Gemini are said to be in aversion, and both, houses on the other side of the opposition, right? Those are in aversion, the dark place that isn't able to witness. So luckily we do have Mars in aversion to the new moon, but we do have Saturn in a positive sextile, you can see here. Neptune as well, okay? So we have to really be clear about what we're trying to do as well. All of the Cancer goodness is not witnessing Gemini because they're close by each other. So Jupiter isn't really a super huge part of the conversation. But Venus does witness by whole sign because Venus will be in Leo. So maybe lean into Venusian qualities. I would say the difference between Jupiter and Venus will often allow good fortune to come to her, be open to good fortune, whereas Jupiter has a little bit more of a hand in maybe taking actions to create it. So this might be a good one to allow some good things to come to you, but through your authenticity, just being your most authentic self. Mercury is back in bounds on the 14th. Mercury right now is out of bounds as I'm recording this. So if you're hearing me communicate in ways that you are unexpected, or you're like, Spencer doesn't talk like that very often, like might be Mercury out of bounds. Mercury is going a little bit outside the normal way of communicating. Maybe you have to think outside the box. Maybe you have to think in ways that are different than you normally would. Maybe you're having ideas that could help move you forward. But Mercury is going to be back in bounds. And so communications might be a little bit more of the norm, I guess you could say, at the new moon. On the 15th, Venus is going to sextile Uranus and trine Neptune. Okay, so let's kind of go, you can see on the outside here. We'll just take you around. I know it's small, but if you zoom in, you can see some stuff, just so you can get a little bit of a visual on this. 15th and 16th, Venus here is sextiling Uranus, okay, right here, 2 degrees. And then it's going to be making the trine to Neptune at 4 degrees. All while it is completing its opposition to Pluto. So gaining in steam to the opposition of Pluto, which perfects on the 17th, okay? So Venus, it's contact with Uranus, you might get some ideas. Something might come to you about a new way of being your more authentic self, a new way to utilize your spotlight, utilize your willpower, utilize your visibility to communicate better. You might then also have some really, interesting ideas around how your most authentic self is not like someone else's with Neptune in Aries 1, and how it can help you become more of an individual rather than just someone who is being consumed by the machine or whatever you want to call it. And then once you figure that out, then you get to meet the machine on the 17th. So figure out who you are and what you believe in the days after this new moon, because you will probably have to advocate for those things, and you might face some resistance to that. But when you are more solid and secure in yourself, you become unassailable, I guess you could say. The first aspect of this lunation is on the 16th as well here, a day before the Venus-Pluto opposition. And then the moon is going to square Saturn. So the moon's going to square Saturn from about 13 degrees of Cancer in the same decan as that Mercury is in. So the tension between having to be forced to commit to our own values and the need to nurture and care for others and to bring the projects into fruition in a protected environment is going to be challenged. The way that can manifest in a lot of ways, I think, is you want to protect something that you're working on, but you feel like, I got to get this out there. And you might be feeling a little vulnerable putting something out before you feel like it's ready. And you might have to put it out before it's perfect or before it's fully formed because of circumstances. So think about that a little bit, as there's a lot of tension between how do we protect something versus being forced to make the new start. A Cancer type is going to delay until they feel like it's like ready to go. Here's an example of this. This is the most Cancerian example ever. We had a family of robins that decided to make a nest on our porch light. And we didn't want them to do that because it's messy and disruptive. And we took the nest down a couple times, but they kept doing it. They're like, nope, this is where we want it to be. And Tanya made this. She eventually made these like streamers, like these shiny metallic streamers, and like these things that were almost like these pigeon guards. And the birds were like, wow, that's pretty sweet. Now we got a disco rave nest, and built it anyway. And at that point, we were like, whatever, like, have at it. We'll learn to coexist. And they laid their eggs. We saw the mother robin feeding the babies, and we were rooting for the babies, and just like, it was really nice. It was a lot of fun. We coexisted. It didn't get too messy. It was right by the door, so she would fly away when we opened the door, and then we would be like, it's okay. I would talk to her and be like, it's fine. We're not going to interfere here. Do your business, you know. But the Venus-Jupiter conjunction was fledgling day. Like, the birds were big enough that we saw one of them outside the nest. I was like, oh no, the one's outside the nest. And he didn't look like he was flying really good. And there were two other ones still in the nest. So I got up to look to see if there was any more there. And as I got up to look at them, they all flew out of the nest. They were like, we're out. I was like, see you later, jackass. Thanks for the disco. And I'm like, oh no. And they were like flying really awkwardly. And one of them flew directly into the street. And I was like, oh shit. So we had to like go chase it back into the garden, you know, into a space that wasn't like literally in the middle of the road. So that to me felt like very Saturn Cancer coded, Saturn and Aries Cancer whatever coded. Like they kind of got forced out of the nest a little bit. I wasn't meaning to do it, but they probably went maybe I don't know if it was a day more than the other one had left. So it is a pretty beautiful manifestation actually of Venus and Jupiter coming together in Cancer. But my own personal experience of it was like, oh no, did they cook enough? You know, did they cook enough in the nest? Are they going to be able to survive? And the other thing that happened too is we had a really severe thunderstorm the night that they fledged. So hopefully they're okay. I saw one of them the next day, and I'm sure that there might be other ones around, but you might feel like a baby bird being pushed out of the nest a little bit too early, and you got to make it work, but there might be pressure. Of course, we have the Venus-Pluto opposition. We've spent time with that on the 17th. Then the sun moves into Cancer, and we have our summer solstice. Okay, so this is on the 21st, and immediately on the 21st, we have first quarter moon squaring the sun in Cancer to the moon in Libra. So the ingress of, let's look at the ingress here of the moon, or sorry, of the sun into Cancer. Well, the solar ingress does happen with the moon in Virgo. Okay, so that's good. That's more positive because those two planets are sextile one another. But almost immediately after that, we have the moon moving into Libra. So the tension of an emotional, personal relationship, the sun and Cancer one, of deciding what we love and feeling passionate about it, is coming into contact with a need to see things from someone else's perspective, a need to balance out fairness. I think that decan of Libra is all about exposing an inequality first. It says this is a situation that's not fair. I think that that's a situation like where you might see an inequality in an intimate relationship that you will need to work through. And then that season is a lot, this summer season is going to be, I think a lot of this is going to be about trying to figure out how to balance out our needs versus the needs of someone else. With the ingress of the sun and the moon in Virgo 3, I think another part of the mundane astrologers would use the ingress of a planet into a cardinal sign to see what the season would kind of be like. And if we utilize that moon in Virgo 3, a lot of that could be around what legacy do we want to pass on? How do we take an idea and put it into form and pass it on to the next generation? And once we've started to determine that, how do we make it fair for everyone? I know for me, I'm thinking a lot about what's the next teaching I want to do? What are the next series of classes that I want to do? And if you have any suggestions, if you have things that you're interested in learning, put it in the chat. I'd be open to hearing suggestions at this point before it's fully formed in my head. But those are the things that could be on a lot of our minds throughout the summer. The sun will trine the north node on the 23rd. Okay, so this is a trine between the light and the node of the moon, the north node of the moon. Our ability to create positive, mutually beneficial relationships may come through surrendering to a divine power, surrendering to the universe's plan rather than our own plan, right? I think this is one of the things that this nodal axis is trying to teach us is we set the intention and then we release attachment to the form. And I've preached this throughout this transit, but it's a good lesson for life in general, is that, if you get so attached to how something is going to meet you, you are going to miss out on a myriad of possibilities to get the same thing accomplished, but in a different way. And I think this is a time where you might be in alignment with the ability to create a mutually beneficial relationship if you're not attached to the form. It's me, Namira is here. Says hello from the Netherlands. Nice to see you, Namira. Hope everything's going well your way. For those of you who are my international friends, happy World Cup to you. Like, I know it's not as much of an American national holiday, but I know for people worldwide, it's an interesting thing. The Netherlands has a really great soccer tradition. It just brought it up in my mind. This beautiful orange uniforms, like what is it? David Beckham is he from the Netherlands? Anyway, I digress. Welcome, Namira. Even if you're not a soccer fan, it's good to have you here. Okay, so it's trine in North Node. We got that. We've got on the 25th, Venus is trine Saturn, and we have the Sun making a square to Neptune. So here's Venus at about 13 to 14 degrees of Leo, trining Saturn. So our ability to win support for our authenticity is probably coming through our commitment to our values. Okay, so that's the trine between those two decans and a fire sign. But we also have a square between the Sun and Neptune. There may be a little bit of tension between our ability to create harmony with our intimate partners and our feeling of who we are as an individual. The lines could get a little bit blurred between us as individuals and us as partners during that day. When we get to the 28th, we have the end of our malefic enclosure of Mercury and Venus. Okay, because what I didn't mention is that Venus will be in malefic enclosure once it trines Saturn. Okay, once it trines Saturn, it moves into malefic enclosure for about 3 days. So keep that a little bit on your radar and know that for about 3 days, Venusian matters might be feel a little sticky. Okay, maybe it's that Sun-Neptune square, maybe it's other factors, etc. But Mars will sextile Jupiter on the 28th, and then we'll move into Gemini. So see, Mars moving into Gemini is the end of this malefic enclosure. So we have now the ray being cast on the other side of Venus here, and then the ray of Saturn is cast, not on the enclosing side of Venus. Same thing with Mercury. Now Mars is in aversion to Mercury, while Saturn is just not even casting a ray. on the side that matters. Okay, that's good. With a caveat, with a caveat, it begins the application really of Mars to Uranus, and that is a big aspect that astrologers have had their eyes on for a while, that perfects on the 4th of July, I think, like literally like America's birthday. Could be a little disruptive. Could be disruptive in our communications, could be an explosion of options and opinions that happen through like an unexpected violence or something of that nature. It's just something to be aware of. Give yourself extra space, give yourself extra head space, practice good mental hygiene during those days so that you don't burn out your nervous system. I have a feeling something's gonna, without fear mongering too much, remember, that's not something we enjoy doing here. Oftentimes these aspects will come together and it isn't as bad as we thought, but there's a range of possibilities. And one range of possibilities says there could be something that is disruptive and unexpected that casts us into overdrive with our thoughts. And if we have space for those extra thoughts, we can survive whatever comes easier. If we are already overloaded mentally, and then we get the disruptive thing that causes a lot more thinking, that's when we start to break down mentally, and then when we have a real problem. So when we see things like this, it's not necessarily something to be afraid of, but what I like to do is create extra space in my schedule, create extra space in my mind to make sure I'm not overly committed around those period of time. And then, especially for this one, when you have Mars and Uranus coming together on the fucking 4th of July, just common sense says, be extremely careful with pyrotechnics. I've seen this in the past. There was a Mars-Uranus conjunction one year on the 4th of July. I think it was in Taurus. And like my neighbor, I watched my dumb neighbor like almost blow his hand off, like holding a Roman candle while it's like firing off. And he's like, ah, and I'm just like, you are stupid. Like that is preventable. So be very careful with, if you're pyrotechnics, that's what you do. It's not my thing. I think it's noisy and it's bad for the environment and bad for our pets. So keep that in mind. But I've been to a few displays. Like I wish people would just keep it to the communal display. Like if there's one event where everybody can go, if that's where they want to go and enjoy the fireworks display, that's one thing. The home fireworks thing is I wish that wasn't a thing, if I'm being 100% honest. But if that is your thing, be smart about it, because you could end up losing a few fingers if you aren't on that day, especially with Mars Uranus. Okay, like, and Gemini rules the arms and the hands, so you do not mess with fate when it comes to like, you know, losing a limb or a digit around this period of time. Can you move the chart, the moon in Virgo trine Mars on Algol? Am I already past it? That was like right before moon entering Libra. I'm concerned in my first house. Oh, okay. I can look at that real quick. Let's just go back for a second. On Algol, the moon on Algol? Oh, the moon applying to Mars. Oh, there is some concern with that. Here is the moon applying to Mars on Algol, but it's a trine. I mean, don't mess with Mars on Algol at all. Like, I think that's the thing. Like, that's a good catch. Actually, that is worth spending some time on. It's a trine, so that's, at least it's not a hard aspect. But Mars on Algol, the increased conditions for violently losing control of ourselves and our instincts is heightened on that day, on the 21st. Like here's an example of this. Ani says, Taurus rising, moon in the 5th. I'm going to a festival maybe, starting to feel less fun, anticipating shade being thrown my way. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I wouldn't get too bent out of shape about it. It's a trine. What I will say though is if you're going to a festival and Mars is on Algol, think about what happens at festivals. A lot of times people are drinking, and that it can be another like Mars Algol, like someone having too much to drink, someone bumps them accidentally, and then they're just like they lose their mind, and then there's a fight, something like that, right? I have 2 neighbors that have Algol placements. So I have an Algol sun neighbor and I have an Algol moon neighbor. And there was a day where they were just getting into it with one another. Like there was one of their dogs injured himself because a dog on the other side of the fence was barking at it, and they somehow ran into something, and that set them off. And then the 2 of them are just algoling out. They're just unconsolable on some level, because I spent 4 hours talking to them, trying to console them. Like eventually one of them, the sun one, calmed down. The moon one, not so much, but really he just needed a day to cool off. But the point being is that when an Algol placement gets activated, you are not rational anymore. That's what we say, we're losing our head. That we say we're losing our head with Algol it's in reference to the Medusa story, where Medusa, Algol is the blinking eye of Medusa, in the constellation Medusa, right? Perseus holding Medusa. And there can be this power that is unleashed, that is like feminine, but also violent, this feminine protective rage. But think about what I just described to you. The Algol sun native got enraged because his beloved dog got injured. It was a protective feminine force that was ignited. But then they just see red. It's like a mother bear that is like, oh my God, we've gotten too close to the cubs. You're fucked. You better not go near her, So that to me is the kind of energy to think about with Mars on Algol is, how do you maintain your own sanity, centeredness, especially Ani, I know, without calling out too much about your chart, like Mars is an important planet for you hosting stuff, right? So you want to make sure that you are centered and you're not getting triggered by things, or like somebody doing something that makes you upset or things like that. But also be careful around people that might be, inebriated or something like that. It's just not a great day to get in a fight, okay? Because if you do get in a fight, people aren't going to be rational about it. They're going to be very irrational. And in some circumstances, that energy can be directed towards protecting people, but it's not one that I really am super comfortable working with personally. Ani says, this looks sticky with the Venus and malefic enclosure, not afraid, but awareness. There you go. I think that's true. Just being aware of what the sky weather is around you. If you know at that festival that you've got Mars on Algol, you're going to be, if you see someone getting out of hand, maybe you move away. You know what I mean? If you see a drunk person like starting to get rowdy with another drunk person, maybe you step aside. Maybe you go to a completely different area of the festival or something like that. They're little common sense things. It doesn't mean that you can't go. It just means that, have your head on a swivel a little bit. Okay, so let's go back to this 28th. This is the end of the malefic enclosure of Venus and Mercury, okay? The end of the malefic enclosure. That probably means that some of the tension that we feel right at the ingress starts to dissipate a little bit, okay? Now, we're not out of the woods, though, because Mercury stations retrograde at 26 Cancer on the 29th. And this is... Mercury retrogrades get a bad rap. I don't think that they're not that bad. Like they just are, just like everything else just is. But I do think that with Mercury stationing retrograde here, things are up for review, right? So there it is in red now. Mercury will be applying to Jupiter within 3 degrees or so, almost within 3 degrees, close within 3 degrees. But then it does what is called a reformation. And a reformation is when a planet retrogrades before it completes an aspect. So I do think that this will echo the Venus-Jupiter conjunction. So I want you to look at what good fortune or what challenges came to you through the Venus and Jupiter conjunction this week. And there will be questions that come up that you are trying to find answers to as Mercury moves into conjunction with Jupiter. But you may have to find more information before you commit to something, because Mercury says, well, not so fast. You gotta have some more information before you commit to that. For me, like the biggest event that I could see was the fledging of the robins in the nest. I can see some kind of possibility that I will revisit an encounter with that family of robins during this day, potentially. Who knows? Like I had another juvenile robin take a dump on my shirt the other day while I was like out talking with my dad in the backyard, and this like a bird just crapped on me. I was like, oh, thanks, buddy. Like, I don't know. Some people believe that it's a blessing. Like I've stepped in a lot of poop lately and been pooped on. Like, I don't know. Maybe that means something good's coming my way, but it just has stood out in my experience. But long story short, questions about surplus and scarcity that you thought you maybe had an answer to, that you thought were about to be completed, you might need some more information. That brings us to the full moon in Capricorn on the 29th as well. And this is really, we've got the tension between the sun and the moon, with the moon in its exile in Capricorn. And we are trying to utilize the solar energy of Cancer 1, where we're trying to find mutually beneficial relationships. We're trying to nurture something that we're passionate about into full form. But the material conditions aren't great with the moon in Capricorn 1. We might be in rocky terrain. We might be trying to grow something in gravelly soil. This is like a metaphor. We might be trying to plant our seeds in the winter when the circumstances aren't that good. These are the tensions that we see at the Capricorn full moon. Okay. And it's all coming back to being hosted by Saturn here. The moon's hosted by Saturn. So pressure to put our values out in the world. Keep in mind too, the 14 degrees of Aries is the retrograde degree for Saturn. I'm playing with theory from Jyotisha, Eastern Vedic astrology, where a fallen retrograde planet can act as its opposite, exalted. So if things aren't working out right now, there might actually be a window at the end of July, between the end of July and December, where Saturnian things might work out a lot better. So you might get the cooperation that you need with a partner, because it might be acting sort of exalted. I know we had some experiences like this last summer when Saturn retrograded. We had a mutually beneficial relationship with my daughter and her business, and it affected our businesses positively. So if things aren't working out here, maybe wait a few weeks, and it could be more fortuitous time. I'll talk about that full moon and the astrology surrounding it in a future broadcast as well. Mars will be at the bending of the nodes. We got 2 more things here, and then we wrap up. Okay. Mars will be at the bending of the nodes on the 30th. And this is interesting to me, because this is Mars moving away from the Pisces North Node, a place of increase, and moving towards a place of decrease. So really practically, what you want to look at there is what are the topics, first of all, associated with Gemini in your chart. In this random Capricorn rising chart, Mars is in the 6th house in Gemini, but it's hosting the 4th house of Aries and the 11th house of Scorpio. So if you're Cap rising, you might be at a turning point with your home or your family and with your friendship community. And you might be moving towards reduction of some of those things with Mars at the bending of the nodes. So that's one possibility. So topically, that's how we do Hellenistic astrology. We look at those guest host relationships. We look at all sorts of other factors involved that are trying to speak to us oracularly. That same day, Jupiter is moving into Leo. So that's a big shift because Jupiter changes signs once every couple years or so. So it is leaving its exaltation. Oh, sad, because it's been doing a lot of heavy lifting in Cancer and moving into Leo and into an opposition with Jupiter, or with Jupiter with Pluto. We lose some dignity, but there's still positive things to come with that. Jupiter does have decanic dignity in the second decan of Leo, so there is that. Just shifts the energy. There will just be, to me, that is the energy of you've been nurturing something for a while. Now it's time for it to see the light of day and to be pressure tested, and it will be pressure tested with the opposition of Pluto. So if you've been protecting a project, it's kind of time to push it out of the nest with Jupiter and Leo a little bit. And that might be uncomfortable, but it's going to be necessary. Okay. Complicate is here. What's up, Kate? Nice to see you. We always see that you're like reaching into the, is that a laundry? Is that a washing machine that you're reaching into? That's fascinating. Kate says, I don't know, Spencer. I've had a lot of poop on me in life. There you go. Who knows? I mean, maybe that's a way for just a lot of us who've been shit on over and over again to say, well, it's lucky. We're going to be getting some good stuff. Sometimes you got to look for the silver linings. Ani says, yeah, Saturday when the moon is applying to Algol, I'm planning on not camping and going home early. You know what? I mean, that's a way to like find a compromise, right? To say, you know what? I'm going to still go try to enjoy this experience, but I'm not going to put myself in a situation where it could be dangerous or I could not feel secure, right? I think that's smart. That's like a good way to kind of have a balanced perspective on it. Kate says, yeah, I was at the laundromat. Yeah, it's a cool picture. It looks almost like you're in a space capsule or something, like you're reaching to us from outer space. Okay, so those are the kind of the aspects. Just preview of July. I'm going to do the astrology of July, hopefully next week. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to get that out for next week. But we got a new moon in Cancer, a full moon in Aquarius. Venus will move all the way through Leo and then into its fall in Virgo. So do some Venusian things while you can before Venus has a little bit more of a struggle. Sun moves into Leo, which is positive, and it can be positive, although we will have the Sun-Pluto opposition. So, you know, these outer planets do have at least some kind of effect on things. As traditional astrologers, we kind of see them as sort of like the way people use fixed stars with the tighter aspects and having a little bit of a more global effect. Mercury will station direct in Cancer 2 in July. The nodes will shift from the North Node in Pisces to the North Node into Aquarius. They move backwards. The South Node will move from Virgo into Leo. So an increase in our awareness of maybe communal relationships, also an increase in censorship and a reduction in the ability to be an authentic individual. So there are two sides to every coin. There is an awareness that our actions affect other people and that we're building community and building an interconnected awareness with the North Node in Aquarius, but it also could be an increase in the attempts to homogenize our communities in a negative way and to suppress individuality as well. So there's two sides of that. We do have Saturn and Neptune retrograding in July, and then we have the Mars Uranus conjunction on the 4th of July. So we'll talk about all that next week. But that's the astrology I've got for you. We're going to do an I-Ching and an animal. So thank you so much for hanging out. Kate says, it's like every good thing has a caveat. I mean, Kate, that is a profound statement, right? If you look at it from a Taoist perspective, without trying to go too far deep into this rabbit hole, but you see in the yin yang symbol that in every extreme of, here, I'll just draw it for you. this is just life, right? Let's take this. Let's use purple. See this? Oh, no, I don't want that. Let's use it. So we've got a big circle here. See that? Actually, let's do this. This will be fun. We'll make it right in the middle of the light and the dark. There you go. And then what you've got here is, let's see if I can find my pen. Is this it? You've got your yin and yang, yin yang, right? And then in the light part, you've got the seed of the dark, and in the dark part, you've got the seed of the light, and they're constantly flowing into one another at their extremes. You see what I'm saying? So there is always a seed of the dark in all light and good things, and there's always a seed of the light in the negative things that we're experiencing, if you follow the Taoist perspective and the symbol of the yin and the yang. To me, it makes a lot of sense. I can see when we go to extremes, we have the, like, for example, if let's say we have a meal that we really love. Like my partner made chicken burritos the other night. They were really good. I had to stop at like the second mini burrito, because if I had eaten the third burrito, something that tasted really good would make me feel bad. The seed of darkness was inherent in that burrito, even though it was objectively something I enjoyed. So, and the same thing with the good. Like sometimes when let's say we lack the resources to do something. If I'm being honest, I don't have enough money to do all the projects I want to do around my house this year. But the seed of the good in that is, if I tried to do all the projects, I might burn myself out. I might be forced to try to find alternative solutions, like get to know my neighbors so that we can help each other in like almost like a mutual aid situation, and find alternatives. And I've had situations like that throughout my entire life. Like I think about sometimes what is that malefic enclosure of Mercury ruling my second house, and both malefics in my second house and my 11th trying to teach me, you know? And a lot of the lack of resources that I've experienced in my life, or my rejection of them, my lack of money, let's be more specific, has forced me to think about and appreciate the non-material things in life. The time that I am gifted with, the wisdom, the knowledge that I have access to, the community, the relationships. That is the seed of the good in what would be objectively, to most people in Western civilization, be viewed as something negative. So all of those seeds are planted within the entire chart. So it's something to consider. Honestly, Kate says, honestly, the only people I've enjoyed getting to know have been within the astrological community. I mean, it's easier to talk when we share a language, for sure. But I would keep your heart open to people outside of it too. Some people just haven't been exposed to those things, and there's good people everywhere, Kate. There really is. Kate says, like a new baby. Yay, like a new baby is coming. Oh yeah, I'm coming out of that small hole. There you go. I love it. Okay, so let's wrap up for the day. And thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you for going on this journey with me, these lengthy explorations. If you're still with me here at the end of the broadcast, know that you are a real one, and that your attention span is still somewhat intact, which I appreciate. You know, I think that oftentimes we really losing our ability to spend real time with someone and really get to know them. And here we're really getting to know the astrology. We're not just making 2 sentences about it and generalizing to the point of it not meaning anything. We're getting into the detail of it. We're connecting it with lived experiences and stories, and your stories, my stories. We're co-creating it together, and I just think it's really beautiful. So thank you for participating in this. Do me a huge favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, sign up for a reading, support my partner Tanya Andrews at There Goes Mojo, all those things. But I do have a couple other things for you. I got a hexagram. It's number 32, which translates to enduring or endurance. And it's moving to peace. I like that. Endurance is interesting because it talks about change. And it talks about change in a way that we normally wouldn't think about it. The judgment for 32 says, enduring success, no blame. It is beneficial to persevere. It is beneficial to have somewhere to go. To endure, Jack Balkin says from his beautiful book, The Laws of Change. To endure means to keep going despite obstacles. Endurance is neither stagnation nor a state of rest. It progresses forward, unlike stagnation, and keeps moving and growing, unlike rest. What endures renews itself and is its effects through continuous activity. What endures does so through change, not in spite of change. It's like David Bowie. David Bowie had a lengthy career because he changed, not because he just did the same thing over and over again, right? It's Capricorn wisdom there too. Let me repeat that. What endures renews itself and its effects through continuous activity. What endures does so through change, not in spite of change. Its effects are understood against the experience of change. We see this in the cycle of the seasons that continually renew themselves as the earth moves around the sun. The cycle of the seasons repeats perpetually because its underlying causes continue. Plants and animals grow and change as they endure over time. When they cease to grow, they die. And then they cease to endure. So it is in life. All life is change. But in order to make change intelligible, there must be things that persist against which change can be understood. To give your life meaning, you must have something that endures. Your identity, your relationship with others, your principles. If you surrender what is enduring within you, then you surrender to the flux of events and become indistinguishable from them. Then there is nothing left of you. The lesson of this hexagram is that you must learn to be consistent and persevere in the face of a changing world. Circumstances around you are changing, but you must maintain your integrity. Be consistent. Do not allow yourself to be blown about by a momentary alteration in fortunes. Do not let concerns about what others may think or how well others are doing by comparison lead you to take drastic or reckless action. Instead, focus on what is and should be enduring in your life, your relationships, your character, and your principles. Okay? There's two changing lines. The initial changing line says, diving into duration. Such perseverance brings misfortune. Oh, and I forgot my animal book. I'll have to go get that in a second. You are eager to get started. Okay. It says, diving into duration, such perseverance brings misfortune. There is nothing beneficial in this. I'm going to see if I can have a special delivery made to me. Hold on one second. One moment. Texting. Okay. You are eager to get started, but Rome was not built in a day. It did fall in a day or so. That's not really true either. There was some decay, right? Anything that is truly enduring requires commitment and continuous efforts extended over a long period of time. Stop and carefully reflect on exactly what you want to do. Plan ahead. Consider the consequences. Do not think that you can cut corners. There we go. Thank you, friend. Hey, got it. Do not think that you can cut corners. You can't cut corners, people. If you try to get quick results, your efforts will amount to nothing. A similar point applies to the cultivation of the self. Often when people see that they must make a change in their lives, they rush forward trying to become the person that they want overnight. Right? This feels like Saturn in Aries type of thing, right? Okay, overnight. Hence, the text speaks of diving into duration, but you cannot change your habits and attitudes so quickly. They did not arise overnight, and they too resulted from a long process of acclimation and adjustment. Reform requires perseverance and continuous commitment to replacing old habits with new ones. If you try to change your lifestyle too quickly without the necessary commitment, you will quickly tire of your efforts and succumb to temptation. This kind of reckless attempt at perseverance brings misfortune. Hence, the text says there is nothing beneficial in this. This is great advice for Saturn in Aries time. You got to have the long term in mind. This is where utilizing like the Saturn in Aquarius oil or something like that, or some ritual where you're getting in touch with real Saturnian energy can be important. You didn't build these negative habits over the course of one day, 1 week, whatever. They were a lifetime of being built up. And you have to dismantle these by replacing them with positive things. The fourth place is not necessarily super positive either. It says no game in the field. It says you cannot be successful in a hunt if there is no game, no matter how much you persevere. Conversely, if you choose the right place to hunt, your persistence will eventually pay off. Dogged determination must be accompanied by planning, self-reflection, and common sense. If you're not achieving your goals, no matter how hard you try, you may be going about things in the wrong way, or you may have characterized your goal so that it is impossible to achieve. This leads to you chasing after the wrong things. Be realistic. Clarify your values and re-examine your methods. Think about what you really want to accomplish and then consider the best way to achieve it. Then your perseverance will help you accomplish something of genuine value. Did you hear what Saturn was speaking through there again? Clarify your values and re-examine your methods. Commit to your values, not necessarily the method of achieving them. I keep saying that over and over and over again. If you know what you believe in, the right path will reveal itself. But if you try to dictate terms to the universe as to how you want this to manifest, you will constantly be bashing your head against a brick wall. That doesn't mean that we don't have goals, but I think that smart people who endure have a vision of the type of value they are trying to achieve or feeling they are trying to achieve. And then they allow flexibility in how to get there. If you only have one path, that path could be blocked. And then you could really find yourself stagnated and frustrated. This is where we have to be like water. If you come to a rock in the flow of a stream down a mountain hill, that water flows around it. It is flexible. It adjusts. It doesn't just, it pools its resources until it can spill around. You see what I'm saying? We have to be like water, right? We have to, like Bruce Lee says, be like water, my friends, right? This will change to peace. 11 is peace, harmony, smoothly flowing, prosperity, union of high and low, harmonious interaction, things going well, advancement. Okay, so we have the judgment says peace, the petty depart, the great arrive, good fortune and success. The sexagram represents a time of great prosperity and concord. Heaven and earth operate together happily and effortlessly. The high act in harmony with the low, the strong with the weak, the great with the small, and progressive forces make great strides. Worthy elements advance without obstacle. People of talent, ability, and wisdom obtain the respect due them, and others work with them freely and happily without envy or rancor. Those who join in are honored and respected in turn for their contributions. Peace descends on the world, and everything flows smoothly and easily. It seems indeed as if heaven were on earth. During this period, your relationships with others become more congenial. Old problems will be resolved. New intimacies will develop. Cooperation and coordination become easier and almost effortless. You can begin new projects with confidence, and the ones that you are currently pursuing will blossom. If you make an effort and devote yourself to achieving your goals now, you will flourish and prosper. Okay, so this is, I think, when we practice endurance, but we practice it with the spirit of change and the spirit of flexibility, that will lead to peace. Okay, so this is something that we, I think, are being taught at this lunation, is flexibility, making adjustments when maybe the first way doesn't work out, or when our vision wasn't complete. Maybe we didn't have enough information. Maybe we didn't have the right resources at the right time, and we have to open ourselves up to alternatives. This leads us to our animal. I'm going to check in with the chat here. Let's see. I'll do my best. I'll do my best to come in. The mule is our animal today. And I have my book here now because my beautiful partner, Tanya, brought it to me as I was desperately searching for the book that I forgot to bring in with me. The mule is very interesting. And this is one that I think is good advice, especially for what we were talking about with like the algol placement and things of that nature. Mule symbolizes independence, intelligence, and wisdom. Mule is the sterile offspring of a male donkey and a female horse. Mule is independent in nature, is extremely intelligent, and is wise. You can't use the same training process with a mule that you would with a horse. A horse is more tolerant and giving. For a mule, if the training doesn't make sense, then it will refuse to do the work. So stubbornness built into this. You have to train slowly in a logical, sequential manner. This means you tend to approach situations in a slow and logical way. If things are confusing, you'll try to make sense of them, but if you can't, then you refuse to be involved. This animal has intelligence for allowance, independence, intelligence, steadiness, wisdom. It has challenges of infertility, overly independent, and stubborn. Stubborn as a mule, right? When a mule appears, it means to trust your own strength, rely on your own wit and intelligence, and make sure you're capable of handling the things you take on. Don't commit to things that you're not 100% on board with. If you believe you've taken on too many projects and are feeling overwhelmed, Gemini 3, anybody? Let some of them go. I love how these things flow into one another. This is why when we get so fixated on one system and we don't open ourselves up to multiple ways the divine can speak to us, we're making a huge mistake, in my opinion. Because listen to that sentence again. That is Gemini 3 to the T, right? If you're overloaded and overwhelmed, there's no room for new things. Let some of them go. Okay? Mule means that you're a strong person with strength of character who prefers working alone. Mule reminds you that sometimes a very heavy workload needs to be carried by more than one, and it's okay to ask for help. Mule gets its intelligence from the donkey and its athleticism from the horse. This means it can handle heavy loads with ease. It has a lot of common sense and a high sense of self-preservation. For you, this means that while you can do the work asked of you, if you feel unsafe or it is illogical, then you have no problem refusing. When mule appears, it means to check yourself to see if you're being overly cautious simply because you don't want to be bothered to do the task at hand. Okay. Mule is also known as long ears, so make sure you're really listening to and understanding what others are saying to you. Use your keen sense of hearing to listen for insinuated meanings, things that are there in tone and pitch, but not voiced in words. This animal assists you when you need to be steady and grounded, or if you need to exit a situation quickly. Mule has a freeze reflex and a flight reflex, so if it is startled, it will freeze in place or bolt. Like mule, most of the time you're grounded and approach life with a steady forward movement. Other times you feel a pressing need to escape. Mule is a hardy animal that is more resistant to disease or parasites, has harder hooves, and can exist on less food than a horse. This means that you too are tough and resilient, and it can accomplish much because your body is built to handle hard work. Mule can help you have better people connections. Mule has a natural affinity for humans, and when treated with kindness, patience, and understanding, it will treat you and do what you are. It will trust you and do what you are asking of it. Mule reminds you to treat people as you would like to be treated. See them as unique spiritual beings with their own spiritual truths. Understand them in this manner, and they will connect with you in the same way. When not seen in this way, people tend to rebel, like the mule. Okay. Treat other people with respect. Be patient. Be flexible. Build trust. Don't get so stubborn in the way that you're doing something. Listen to your intuition. Listen to what's going on around you. Pay attention to the nonverbal signals that you're receiving as well. And if something looks dangerous, like with Mars Algol or Mars Uranus, it's okay to just be like, I'm out. You know, when we're cutting the head off something's not, it doesn't mean we're losing our head. Maybe we're just like, nope, we're not part of that anymore. Do you see what I'm saying? So mule can be really helpful in that regard. So my friends, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. You can find me over at Spencer Michaud at social media. You can find me at spencermichaud.com if you'd like to reach out for a reading. I hope that you do. I always enjoy working with you. Helps me keep the lights on too. So you're supporting the work that I'm doing, not only here by working with you in your own life, but supporting the work that I'm doing here as a service to the community each week by signing up for a reading, by visiting the store, purchasing a webinar, by visiting Third Coast Mojo and supporting Tanya's work. All of that stuff goes to support the work that we're doing here. You can buy a super chat or a super thanks after the fact, or support the channel at buymeacoffee.com. If you want to help support some of the restoration projects and native pollinator habitat projects, that's the place to do it. So we could use all the help we can get, to be honest. But I digress. So have a great weekend. Have a great new moon in Gemini. Try to be flexible. If the first option doesn't work out, be flexible. If you don't have the resources monetarily to do something, maybe there's another way to get support. Maybe there's another way to be patient with whatever's going on in your life. And kindness really does make a difference. I think that this is a real secret to less stress in your life. If you're kind to others, if you're putting out the energy that you'd like to receive back to you, people are going to be nicer to you. People are going to be kinder to you. I've learned this the hard way. I have strong opinions on things. As much as I am trying to find common ground with people, when I have very strong feelings. And as a young person, some of those feelings were negative. And whenever I put those negative feelings out, I got a lot of it back, thrown back in my face, reflected back into my face. So I've learned that if I want to be strong, if I want strong kindness to come back to me, I have to have strong kindness out into the world. And sometimes that can manifest as protective energy, but it really does help. And keep that in mind in the end of Gemini season 2, because you might be tempted to make an ultimatum and to cut off the head of something that you don't like, but leave some space to change your mind. I think that's the thing. Don't make such black and white statements that you can't learn something new and then be flexible and accumulate information like water and then spill around those obstacles, even if those obstacles are interpersonal conflicts with other people. That's what I've got for you. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. We'll see you the next time. Peace, friends.